Josiah, the youngest king and the greatest king of Israel. In the tapestry of history, some stories shine with the enchantment of fairy tales, yet are woven from threads of truth. Imagine a kingdom shrouded in darkness, where evil reigns supreme and hope flickers like a dying. Now picture a child, so young he struggles with his laces, suddenly crowned king, the fate of a nation resting upon his tiny shoulders. Implausible, perhaps. But this is no fable. This is the opening chapter of Josiah's epic, a tale of Israel's youngest ruler who, against all odds, would become one of its greatest. His journey, etched in the annals of time, beckons us to witness how innocence and courage can ignite a beacon of change in the darkest of time. The kingdom of Judah was teetering on the precipice of disaster. Once a beacon of glory under the reigns of David and Solomon, the nation now found itself on the verge of spiritual and moral ruin. The kings who succeeded the sagacious Solomon had, for the most part, deviated from the path ordained by the Lord, leading their people into the treacherous mire of idolatry and injustice. Amid this turmoil, a boy destined to alter the course of Judah's history was born. His name was Josiah, the son of Ammon and grandson of Manasseh. O of the most nefarious rulers the southern kingdom had ever known. The Bible, in 2 Kings 21:19-20, unveils the character of Josiah's father. Ammon was 22 years old when he ascended to the throne, and his reign in Jerusalem lasted a mere 2 years. His actions were an affront to the Lord, mirroring the corruption and idolatry had wormed their way into the very fabric of Jewish society, their tendrils deeply entrenched. Altars dedicated to foreign deities marred the landscape, while the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, once a testament to God's glory. The people had strayed so far from their covenant with God that the sacred law of Moses, the very bedrock of their relationship with the divine, had been lost to the mists of time. It was against this backdrop of spiritual decay that young Josiah came of age. His father, Ammon, continued the legacy of his predecessor, Manasseh, perpetuating the depraved practices of idolatry and social injustice. 2 Kings 21:21-22 recounts, he followed in the footsteps of his father, embracing the idols his father had served and bowing down before them. He turned his back on the Lord, the God of his forefathers, and abandoned his righteous path. Ammon's reign, however, was destined to be both ephemeral and turbulent. After only 2 short years on the throne, he fell victim to a palace coup orchestrated by his own servant. Scripture in 2 Kings 21:23-24 tells us, "And the servants of Ammon conspired against him, assassinating him within the confines of his own palace. However, the people of the land rose up against those who had slain King Ammon. And so it was that Josiah, at the tender age of 8, ascended to the throne of Judah, thrust into the position of leadership through an unanticipated and sorrowful turn of events. The obstacles confronting Josiah were formidable. How could a ruler so young hope to reverse generations of entrenched apostasy and corruption? Born into a lineage tarnished by the wickedness of his predecessors, how could he find his way back to the divine? The answers to these questions would slowly begin to reveal themselves during the formative years of Josiah's reign. Although too young to effectively govern, the boy king found guidance and support from the council of faithful advisors who surrounded him during his childhood and adolescence. Among these trusted advisors were likely the high priest Hilkiah and the scribe Shaphan, individuals who would later play pivotal roles in Josiah's sweeping reform. These devout men must have had a profound influence on the young monarch, planting and nurturing the seeds of faith that would blossom in the years to come. While the Bible does not delve into the specifics of Josiah's education, it is reasonable to conclude that he was meticulously schooled in the time-honored traditions of Israel and the teachings of the prophets. As Josiah matured, So too did his thirst for knowledge and his interest in matters concerning God. It's likely he was regaled with tales of his ancestors, legendary figures like David and Solomon, who had ushered in eras of extraordinary prosperity and unwavering. Perhaps, as he listened to these stories, he pondered the reasons behind Judah's descent into such a state of decline and what actions he could take to restore it to its former glory. The years of Josiah's childhood and youth were undoubtedly a period of intense learning and preparation. As affairs of state were managed by his seasoned advisors, the young king immersed himself in the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, cultivating within himself a character that would one day astound those around him. Approaching the age of 16, Josiah began to assume a more active role in the governance of his kingdom. His youth, which many perceived as a liability, proved to be a blessing in disguise. Unburdened by the corrupting influences that had ensnared his forefathers, Josiah was poised to lead Judah toward a brighter future. The stage was set for a transformation so remarkable that it would forever leave its mark on the annals of Israel's history. An improbable leader, born into a world overshadowed by corruption and the worship of false gods, was about to embark on a path that would redefine the destiny of his nation and establish an enduring legacy of unwavering faith and obedience to God. At the age of 16, Josiah embarked on a personal spiritual odyssey that would profoundly impact not only his own life, but also the fate of the entire kingdom of Judah. 2 Chronicles 34:3 marks this crucial turning point. In the 8th year of his reign, while still a youth, he began to seek after the God of his father David. And in the 12th year, he commenced the purification of Judah and Jerusalem and cast images. One can envision the young king devoting countless hours to the study of ancient scriptures, engaging in deep theological discourse with priests and prophets, and tirelessly striving to understand the intricate tapestry of his people's history and their sacred covenant with God. He immersed himself in the tenets of the covenant God had forged with Israel, familiarizing himself with the laws handed down through Moses and confronting the sobering consequences his people faced for their disobedience. As Josiah's knowledge and understanding of God's word deepened, so too did his resolve to reestablish the true worship of God throughout the kingdom of Judah. By the age of 20, he felt prepared to embark on concrete actions and introduce tangible reforms. These actions speak volumes about Josiah's courage and unwavering conviction. He was not content with personal piety in isolation. He felt a profound responsibility to take decisive and potentially perilous measures to cleanse his entire nation. The demolition of pagan altars, toppling of Asherah poles, and destruction of idols was a bold undertaking, fraught with risk. Many within the kingdom had grown up surrounded by these pagan practices, viewing them as ingrained societal norms. Josiah, however, remained resolute in his mission to eradicate anything that stood in opposition to the true worship of the Lord. The purification process was not confined to the boundaries of Jerusalem and Judah. Josiah extended his reforms to encompass the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, Simeon, and even those as far-reaching as Naphtali, as documented in 2 Chronicles 34:6. 7. He replicated these actions in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, their pagan sites, wherever they were found. After dismantling the altars, shattering the Asherah poles, and pulverizing the carved and cast images, he ensured that every incense altar throughout the land of Israel was destroyed. Having completed this monumental task, he returned to Jerusalem. Josiah's decision to expand his reforms beyond the borders of his own kingdom is noteworthy. While these regions technically fell under the dominion of the northern kingdom, which had succumbed to Assyrian conquest, Josiah felt a profound sense of responsibility to purify the entirety of the land that God had promised to the Israelites. In the 18th year of his reign, at the age of 26, Josiah embarked on one of the most pivotal undertakings of his rule, the restoration of the Temple of the Lord? This momentous decision is recounted in 2 Chronicles 34:8. In the 18th year of his reign, having cleansed the land and the temple, he commissioned Shaphan son of Azaliah, Maaseiah, the governor of the city, and Joah son of Joahaz, the recorder, to oversee Lord his God. The decision to restore the temple was instrumental in the spiritual revitalization of Judah. Solomon's architectural masterpiece had served as the epicenter of worship, a physical manifestation of God's presence among his chosen people. Sadly, during the years of spiritual decay, it had fallen into disrepair, becoming a symbol of neglect and defilement. Its restoration, spearheaded by Josiah, embodied the king's ardent desire to mend the fractured relationship between God and his people. It was during these restoration efforts that a momentous event unfolded, one that would dramatically alter the trajectory of Josiah's reform. Hilkiah, the high priest, stumbled upon an astonishing discovery, as documented in 2 Chronicles 34:14-15. While retrieving the funds that had been brought to the temple of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest happened upon the book of the law, which had been given to Shaphan the scribe, exclaiming, "I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord." The unearthing of the book of the law was a watershed moment. It is believed that this book contained either excerpts from or the entirety of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Having been lost or deliberately concealed during the years of spiritual decline, its rediscovery provided Josiah and his people with an indispensable roadmap for understanding the divine will and fulfilling the sacred obligations of their covenant. Upon hearing the words of the book read aloud, Josiah was overcome with emotion. 2 Chronicles 34:19-21 captures the depth of his response. The king was profoundly moved upon hearing the words of the law. He tore his robes in a gesture of anguish and commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam son of Shaphan, divine guidance. "Go," he implored them, "inquire of the Lord on behalf of myself and all who remain in Israel and Judah concerning the words of this book that has been found. For the Lord's wrath is undoubtedly fierce against us, as our ancestors have failed to keep the word of the Lord, neglecting to live in accordance with everything inscribed in this book." Josiah's reaction reveals the depths of his humility and the sincerity of his reverence for God. He recognized at once that his people had veered dangerously off course, straying far from the path prescribed by God, and were now on the receiving end of divine judgment. His concern extended beyond his own well-being. He felt a heavy responsibility for the spiritual fate of all the people of Judah. In response to Josiah's heartfelt plea for guidance, the prophetess Huldah delivered a poignant message from God, a message that was both reassuring and sobering. She confirmed that Judah's disobedience would inevitably result in divine retribution, but she also relayed words of solace meant specifically for Josiah. 2 Chronicles 34:26-28 records, "But to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, this is what you are to say to him. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, because your heart was tender, because you humbled yourself before its people, because you humbled yourself before me and tore your clothes and wept before me. I have heard you, declares the Lord. Therefore, you will be gathered to your ancestors in peace, and your eyes will not see all the disaster I am going to bring on this place and on those who live here." This message must have been both a source of comfort and a daunting call to action for Josiah, despite the inevitability of impending judgment. God acknowledged the genuineness of Josiah's repentance, recognizing his sincere change of heart. He promised the king that he would be spared from witnessing the full extent of the devastation that awaited Judah. Motivated by this divine revelation, Josiah resolved to gather his people and publicly read aloud from the rediscovered book of the law. 2 Chronicles 34:30-31 describes this momentous gathering. "The king ascended to the temple of the Lord, accompanied by all the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests, the Levites, in fact, every single person from the most And there, he read to them every word from the book of the covenant, which had been found in the temple of the Lord. Standing in his place of authority, the king made a solemn vow before the Lord, a covenant to follow the Lord and uphold his commandments, decrees, and statutes with unwavering devotion, and to faithfully put into practice the words of the covenant as they were written in that book. This public declaration, this reaffirmation of their commitment to the covenant, marked the pinnacle of Josiah's spiritual awakening, and its ripple effects were felt throughout Judah. The king, leading by example, rallied his people, urging them to renew their devotion to God and live in accordance with his laws. This marked the dawn of a new era characterized by renewed faithfulness and obedience, which promised to reshape the very fabric of the nation. Empowered by the revitalized covenant, Josiah set in motion a series of extensive reforms designed to fundamentally reshape both the religious and societal landscapes of Judah, eradicating idolatry in all its forms and reinstating the true worship of the Lord throughout his kingdom became his unwavering mission. Josiah's purge did not stop with inanimate objects. He understood that true spiritual reformation necessitated addressing the human element as well, specifically the priests who had facilitated and encouraged the worship of idols. 2 Kings 23:5 states, "He deposed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had installed to offer sacrifices at the high places in the towns of Judah and the villages around Jerusalem, those who had burned incense to Baal, One of the most powerful and enduringly symbolic actions undertaken during Josiah's reign was the destruction of the altar at Bethel. This particular altar, erected by Jeroboam during the fragmentation of the kingdom, had served as a tangible representation of Israel's descent into apostasy, a painful reminder that had loomed for generations. 2 Kings 23:15-16 offers a vivid account of Josiah's decisive actions. Furthermore, Josiah tore down the altar at Bethel, the high place built by Jeroboam son of Nebat, who had caused Israel to sin, smashing the altar. Noticed several tombs on the hillside. He ordered his men to bring out the bones from the tombs and burn them on the altar, desecrating it just as the man of God had predicted long ago. Josiah's bold act not only fulfilled an ancient prophecy, but also carried immense symbolic weight. It represented the spiritual reunification of a divided people, a beacon of hope, signaling that Israel and Judah could once again find unity under the banner. Josiah's reform efforts extended beyond the physical manifestations of worship to encompass the restoration of vital religious festivals, with a particular emphasis on the Passover. 2 Kings 23 provides a glimpse into the magnitude of this endeavor. The king then issued this order to the entire assembly: celebrate the Passover to the Lord your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant. Never had such a Passover been celebrated from the days of the judges who led Israel, nor throughout the reigns of all the kings of Israel and Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was celebrated to the Lord in Jerusalem. This particular Passover celebration marked a turning point in the history of the Israelites. It signified their collective return to obedience, a heartfelt recommitment to God's divine law, and a powerful reaffirmation of their identity as God's chosen people, bound by a sacred covenant. The text emphasizes the unparalleled scale of this Passover celebration, drawing a stark contrast with all previous observances and suggesting that this particular instance was the most authentic and comprehensive in generation. Josiah's pursuit of righteous leadership was not limited to the purely spiritual realm. Recognizing the interconnectedness of faith and daily life, he implemented significant social reforms, working tirelessly to uproot customs and practices that violated God's laws and caused harm to the fabric of society. 2 Kings 23:24 provides insight into this aspect of his reign. Furthermore, Josiah eradicated those who consulted mediums and spiritists, along with the household gods, idols, and the book that Hilkiah the priest had found in the temple of the Lord. Sadly, despite the genuine nature and far-reaching scope of Josiah's reforms, a somber truth is revealed in 2 Kings 23, 26, 27. Nevertheless, the Lord did not relent from the heat of his fierce anger, which burned against Judah because of all that Manasseh had done said, I will remove Judah also from my presence as I removed Israel, and I will reject Jerusalem, my chosen city, and this temple, about which I said, my name shall be here. These verses highlight a tragic reality. Although Josiah's reforms were both sincere and wide-ranging, they could not fully erase the consequences of generations past, sins that had accumulated over time, particularly the egregious transgressions committed under Manasseh's. God's judgment, it seemed, was irreversible. Yet, Josiah's legacy would not be easily extinguished. His reforms, particularly his emphasis on upholding the law of Moses, provided a sturdy spiritual foundation, a beacon of hope that would help the people of Judah navigate the tumultuous years of exile. The importance of their faith and their unique identity would be preserved thanks to his efforts. The rediscovery of the Book of the Law during Josiah's reign had a particularly profound and enduring impact. It served as a much-needed catalyst for spiritual renewal, reminding the people of their rich heritage and the sacred responsibilities outlined in their covenant with God. This newfound emphasis on studying and upholding the law would prove to be a lifeline during their exile, a period when the people of Judah, stripped of their temple and forcibly removed from their promised land, would have to rely on their faith and scripture as sources of strength and guidance. Beyond the letter of the law, it was Josiah's personal embodiment of unwavering devotion and obedience that resonated deeply, serving as a shining example for future generations of leaders and ordinary individuals alike. While his immediate successors may have strayed from the path he had paved, the memory of Josiah, a righteous and just king, continued to inspire hope and serve as a benchmark for those aspiring to lead with God's wisdom. Josiah's untimely death and the subsequent decline of Judah stand as solemn reminders of the consequences awaiting those who stray from God's path. Prophets, particularly Jeremiah, often drew parallels between Josiah's steadfast faithfulness and the blatant disregard displayed by his successors, framing this stark contrast as a key factor contributing to the impending judgment that awaited Judah. Josiah's legacy is not easily categorized. It is a tapestry woven from both triumphant highs and heartbreaking lows. His reign, in many ways, represents the final flicker of glory and unwavering faith before the darkness of exile descended. However, his premature death and the heartbreaking swiftness with which his people reverted to idolatry after his passing illustrate the inherent difficulty in achieving lasting spiritual transformation through top-down leadership alone. And yet, the seeds of Josiah's impassioned efforts did not entirely vanish. The renewed emphasis on adhering to God's law, the comprehensive purging of pagan worship from the land, and the establishment of Jerusalem as the undisputed center of religious life. These initiatives, born during Josiah's reign, would continue to bear fruit in the centuries that followed. They would play a vital role in shaping Jewish identity in a post-exile world, laying the foundation for the evolution of Judaism as practiced during the Second Temple period and beyond. Therefore, although Josiah's reign ultimately culminated in tragedy and his dream of a Judah wholly devoted to God was never fully realized during his lifetime, his impact extended far beyond his final breath. He is remembered as a testament to the enduring power of faith, a shining example of the profound impact a leader can have when he governs with an unwavering commitment to following God's will. Josiah's story reminds us that true obedience to the divine extends far beyond the the confines of religious rituals. It has the power to permeate and transform every facet of society. However, as we will soon learn, this golden age of peace and spiritual renewal was not destined to last. On the horizon, geopolitical tensions loomed, threatening to engulf Judah in a maelstrom that would put Josiah's reforms. The reign of Josiah, a period marked by remarkable achievements and unwavering faith, was tragically cut short. Despite this, his influence continued to resonate with the people of Judah for generations to come, shaping their beliefs and sense of identity. Josiah's reforms had a lasting impact precisely because they went beyond superficial changes, reaching the core of how the Jewish people perceived themselves and their relationship with God. The rediscovery and renewed emphasis on Moses' law as the bedrock of their national life had a profound effect that weathered even the tumultuous storm of the Babylonian exile. Josiah's unwavering commitment to the purity of worship and his elevation of the temple in Jerusalem as the spiritual heart of their faith established a precedent that would continue to shape Jewish religious practice for centuries. It's crucial to acknowledge that Josiah's reign played out against a backdrop of escalating geopolitical turmoil. The mighty Assyrian Empire, once a dominant force in the region, was crumbling, leaving behind a dangerous power vacuum. Two ambitious powers, Egypt and Babylon, were locked in a high-stakes struggle to fill the void. It was against this volatile backdrop that Josiah made a fateful decision, one that would ultimately lead to his tragic demise. In the year 609 BC, Pharaoh Necho of Egypt embarked on a military campaign northward, determined to bolster the remnants of the beleaguered Assyrian army against the rising threat posed by the Babylonians. Josiah, for reasons that remain shrouded in some degree of ambiguity within the biblical narrative, opted to intervene in this conflict. A detailed account of this fateful clash is provided in 2 Chronicles 35:20-22. After Josiah had restored the temple, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, led his army north to the Euphrates River to help the king of Assyria at Carchemish. King Josiah of Judah went to oppose him there, but Necho sent messengers back to Josiah with this message: "What do you want with me, king of Judah? I am not here to fight you today, but I am on my way to fight you today, but I am on my way to fight against another nation. Work, for he is with me, or he will destroy you." But Josiah stubbornly refused to turn back. He disguised himself so that he might be able to fight with Necho, and he would not listen to what Necho was saying at God's command. He went out to fight him in the valley of Megiddo. This passage offers valuable insights into the circumstances surrounding the encounter. Notably, Necho made a concerted effort to dissuade Josiah from engaging in battle, asserting that his mission enjoyed divine backing. What makes Josiah's decision to disregard this warning all the more tragic is the text's strong implication that Necho's words did, in fact, originate from God, adding an element of divine will to the equation. The clash that unfolded at Megiddo proved catastrophic for Josiah. 2 Chronicles 35:23-24 recounts the events with chilling clarity. During the battle, the archers of King Necho's army hit King Josiah. So they lifted him from his war chariot, placed him in another chariot he had waiting, and took him back to Jerusalem, where he died. He was buried in the royal cemetery. The entire nation of Judah and Jerusalem went into deep mourning over Josiah's death. The death of their beloved king dealt a devastating blow to the people of Judah. Not only had they lost a capable and deeply devout leader, but Josiah's untimely demise signaled the beginning of a swift and relentless decline that would culminate in Jerusalem's destruction and their painful exile from their homeland. The outpouring of grief that followed Josiah's death was both profound and widespread. 2 Chronicles 35:25 notes, Jeremiah composed funeral songs for Josiah, and to this day all the professional singers, both men and women, still sing about King Josiah in their lamentations. These became a tradition in Israel. This passage underlines the extent to which Josiah's passing reverberated throughout his nation. It became an indelible part of their collective memory, commemorated in song and verse for generations to come. Following their king's passing, the people of Judah looked to his son, Jehoahaz, to ascend the throne. His reign, however, would be tragically brief, as recounted in 2 Kings 23:31-33. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah, from Libnah, had done. Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Riblah, in the land of Hamath, so he could not rule. This passage starkly illustrates the rapid unraveling of Judah following Josiah's death. With their king gone, Egypt, encountering no meaningful opposition, exerted its dominance, seizing control of Judah, deposing its newly crowned ruler, and imposing a hefty financial burden on the once prosperous nation. Pharaoh Necho, further solidifying his grip on Judah, then installed Eliakim, another of Josiah's sons, as a puppet ruler, even going so far as to rename him Jehoiakim as a display of his absolute authority. 2 Kings 23:34-35 describes this calculated maneuver. Pharaoh Necho installed Eliakim, son of Josiah, as king in place of his father, Josiah, and changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. But Necho took Jehoahaz and carried him off to Egypt, and Jehoahaz died there. Jehoiakim paid Pharaoh Necho the silver and gold he demanded. In order to do so, he levied a tax on the land and exacted the silver and gold from the people of the land. These events marked the beginning of a dark chapter for Judah, an era of decline and subjugation. The once proud kingdom, having tasted independence and prosperity under Josiah's reign, was now relegated to a state of subservience, its fate dictated by foreign. Josiah's reign, though concluding in tragedy, left an enduring legacy. He serves as a poignant example of the transformative power of unwavering faith, reminding us that aligning oneself with God's will transcends the personal sphere. It has the power to. Unfortunately, his story is also a cautionary tale, reminding us that achieving lasting change, especially in matters of the human heart, is an uphill battle. Despite the ultimate failure of his efforts to avert Judah's fate, Josiah's dedication serves as an enduring inspiration, urging us to ponder how we can best live out our own lives to effect positive change that extends beyond our brief time. If Josiah's story inspired you, share this video to spread the message. And if you want to explore more stories of faith and courage, subscribe to our channel for a deeper dive into the wisdom of the Bible. Let's learn from the past to create a better future together.